Okay, Jonathan, B'ezras Hashem, today we will be learning the third Mishnah of Masechet Bava Metzia, Baruch Hashem. We are moving along in this beautiful Masechet. Says the Mishnah, Haya rochev al gabe behema. So a person was traveling on his animal. V'ra'a et Metzia. And he sees in the distance a lost object. So over here, there's no question anymore about who picked up the item first. In the last two Mishnayot that we had a question over who picked up the lost object first. In today's Mishnah, that's not what we're talking about. There's no question over who did it. The question, we know who picked it up. The question is a different question. Who acquired it? How so? Says the Mishnah, this guy's on a donkey, let's say, or he's on a horse, right? And he sees in the distance a lost object. Says the Mishnah, Ve'amar lechavero, he tells his buddy who's walking alongside him, Tenehali, give that lost object to me. Now, it's very important to pay attention to the words that he says. He says, give that object to me. Okay, give. Give means that when you pick it up, you're not acquiring it for yourself. You're not acquiring it for me. You're simply picking it up and giving it to me in order that I should acquire it for myself. Okay, that's what he says. Now, this person, Netala, this guy, the friend, picks up the lost item, Netala ve'amar, and he says, Ani zachiti ba. You should know that I picked up this lost object, and when I picked it up, I then decided that I want to acquire it for myself. So at that point, says the Mishnah, zachaba. He, no question, is now the owner of this object. It was a lost object, and he has no obligation to give this item to his friend, even though his friend saw it first. Doesn't make a difference. You can pick it up and you can acquire it for yourself. Now, the key over here is to understand that even though the friend said, give it to me, it does not mean that when he lifted up the object that he is acquiring it for his friend. He lifted up the object basically with nothing in mind. Not his friend, nor himself. But then as he's holding it, he's looking at it, and he says, you know what? Why should I give this to my friend? I want it for myself. Says the halacha, no problem. He's allowed to keep that. He's allowed to do that. He can pick it up, having in mind nothing, and then decide that he wants it for himself, and that's fine. Says the Mishnah, however, if on the other hand, by the time that he goes to the guy on the horse and he gives him the object, and then he says, actually, I am the one who wants to own this item. I got it first. So then lo amar klum. Then he didn't do anything. Because again, the point of this was the guy on the horse said to him, give it to me. And when he said, give it to me, then the point was that when he takes it from his hand, at that point he will lift it up and acquire it for himself. And at that point already, it's too late to now claim ownership of it after you already gave the object over to the guy who's on the horse. At that point, it's over. Now, this is all in the situation where he said, give it to me, where the person who's going to lift up the object is lifting it up with no intention, just with the purpose of giving it to the other guy, but he did not acquire it for the other person when he lifted it up, and he did not acquire it for himself either, and he's able to still say that, as he's about to walk over to the guy, he's looking at it, he says, wow, this is nice, looks good. Actually, I want it for myself. That works. However, says Rabbi Ovadia bar Tenura in his commentary over here, but let's say the guy on the horse did not say, give it to me. You know what he said? He said, zecheliba, acquire it for me. Then the minute that the guy goes to lift it up, then the person who lifted up the item is lifting up the item at the behest of the person for whom he's lifting it up for that guy on the horse. So then kana harochev, says Rabbi Ovadia Bartanura, the guy on the horse acquired it. The reason is because when he lifted it up, he had in mind the guy on the horse. He did a zechiyah. Zechiyah means he gave over this object as he picked it up to the person on the horse. And at that moment, ve'en hamagbiya yachol lomar ani zachiti ba. At that point, he cannot say anymore, I acquired it for myself. Now, what he can do is he can say, listen, I understand that you just told me to go and acquire it for you. Take a hike. Have a nice day. We're not friends anymore. That money is mine, or that item is mine, and it's all good, right? And then he goes and he rejects the command of the first guy, and then he says, I'm doing it for myself. That's fine. But if the person goes after the guy on the horse said to him, Zeche liba, acquire it for me, pick it up for me. When you lift it up, it should belong to me. At that moment, once he does that, then the item belongs to the person on the horse, and there is no turning back from that. Now, in the other case where he didn't say anything, he just said to him, listen, give it to me. And at the moment that he lifted it up, he didn't acquire it, and he didn't acquire it for his friend either. He's just on his way walking to give it to him. So there the Mishnah says that at the moment that he hands it to the guy on the horse will lift it up, and at that point already, by him lifting him up himself, he acquires it for himself. And at that point already, there's no way for the person to turn around and go back and say, no, actually, I want it for myself. At that point, it's too late. There's nothing to do about that. So the whole time that he was holding on to it, says Rabbi Ovadia Bartanura, in that case where the guy said, give it to me, the whole time he was holding on to it, it was hefker. It was ownerless, because his lifting it up didn't do anything. It didn't acquire it for himself. It didn't acquire it for the guy on the horse. So at that moment, he could still do whatever he wants with it. He could still acquire it for himself, or he can hand it to the other guy, and that guy will acquire it. But when the guy says, Zecheliba, get it for me, meaning pick it up for me, at the moment that he picks it up, it belongs to the guy on the horse. All right, guys, that's today's Mishnah. If we have any questions, bechavod, now's the time.
So, Rabbi, I have a question.
Thank you, Rabbi.
These two people, they said, okay, one of them, the one on the horse said it's mine, and the other guy said it's mine. They go to the court. The guy said, okay, I had it in mind when I pick it up, it's mine. And they said, okay, you swear. Maybe you swear wrong. And still, the other guy, the guy is going to get set, no?
Well, no, over here, the thing is like this. The dispute, the thing is over here, it's not the same thing. In other words, there's no swearing. Over here, nobody questions that the guy who was walking next to the person riding the horse, he's the one who picked it up. It all depends on what he had in mind when he was doing it. What was his intention? When he lifted it up, did he have in mind to pick it up for the guy on the horse? Meaning that he's acquiring it for him? Because that's a concept too, guys. I didn't go into it so much, but there's a point over here that you can find something in the street, or somebody can give you something to acquire for somebody else. You lift it up, and at that point, the other person now owns it. You lifted, let's say you found a watch in the middle of the street. No identifying features, no, nothing there. Just a plain old watch that could belong to anybody. And it's lost in the middle of Times Square, and the owner definitely gave up hope of ever seeing it again. And the halakha says that if you pick it up, you can acquire it for yourself, right? So therefore, let's say the person picks it up, and he has in mind his buddy, Avraham. He picks it up, and he has in mind Avraham. At that moment, when he picked it up for Avraham, without even realizing it, is now the owner of a brand new watch, right? That's called zechiyah. So over here, this guy goes over to the lost object, and at the moment he picks it up, if he has in mind to be zoche, meaning to acquire it for the guy on the horse, at that very second, it becomes the property of the guy on the horse, and there's no turning back. because that's what he had in mind when he acquired it. He acquired it on behalf of the guy on the horse. So on the other hand, if he lifted it up and he didn't have in mind anything, not for himself and also not for the guy on the horse, it's still ownerless right now. So he can decide right now to look at it and decide, I want it for myself. Or he can decide to just hand it over to the other guy on the horse, and the guy on the horse will accept it. But really, the bottom line is that it all depends on the guy who's picking up the item. What is he having in mind? What is he trying to do? So if this guy comes and says, listen, I had in mind myself. I'm sorry. I didn't have in mind the guy on the horse. He might have said to acquire it for him, and I said to him, take a hike. I want it for myself. So then he acquired it for himself, right? If the guy on the horse said, give it to me, and then I gave it to him, and then he acquired it, so then it's the question of the fact that now he acquired it for himself, and therefore now it's his. So now the story is like this: if there's a dispute over the argument, if there's a dispute over who does this belong to, so the first thing we're going to do is ask who has possession of it, who's holding on to it. So if the guy on the horse is holding on to it, immediately, guys, we assume that it belongs to him. Why? Because he is a muhzak. Remember that rule, guys. Muhzak means the one who has possession of the item. The one who has possession of the item, the muhzak, is the one who is assumed to be the owner of the item. And if somebody wants to try and take that item away from him, the burden of proof is on him. So I could swear from morning till night in court that it's mine. But if I don't prove it, then it's not going to come to me. The only time that we had a case where it's potentially going to belong to me is if we're both holding on to the item, where we both have possession of the item. In that case, we would say, well, since you both have possession, so therefore we have to assume that it belongs to both of you, because you're both physically holding on to the edges of that shirt or talit or whatever it is, right? So you don't just swear for no reason. You only swear when you both have possession of it. But in this case, you don't both have possession of it. One of them does. Either the guy who is holding on to who picked it up himself and kept it for himself, or the guy that he gave it to on the horse. So since one of them has possession, if he comes to Beit Din with the item in his hand, automatically he's assumed to be the owner, unless the other person can prove he's not. Clear, guys?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, Tzadikim, wonderful. Have a great day. B'ezras Hashem, we'll continue tomorrow.
You too.
Go to.
Thank you. Good day.